6:19. Sunshine in my soul. It's good to see the sun today. There is sunshine in my soul today, more glorious and bright than grows in any earthly sky. For Jesus is my light. Oh, there's sunshine, blessed sunshine, when the peaceful, happy moments roll. When Jesus shows his smiling face, there is sunshine in my soul. There is music in my soul today, a carol to my King, and Jesus listening can hear the songs I cannot sing. Oh, there's sunshine, blessed sunshine, when the peaceful, happy moments roll. When Jesus shows his smiling face, there is sunshine in my soul. There is gladness in my soul today, and hope and praise and love for blessings which he gives me now, for joys laid up above. Oh, there's sunshine, blessed sunshine, when the peaceful, happy moments roll. When Jesus shows his smiling face, there is sunshine in my soul. And I am resolved. 378. First, second, last verse. I am resolved no longer to linger, charmed by the world's delight. Things that are higher, things that are nobler, these have allured my sight. I will hasten to him, hasten so glad and free. Jesus, greatest, highest, I will come to thee. I am resolved to go to the Savior, leaving my sin and strife. He is the true one, he is the just one, he hath the words of life. I will hasten to him, hasten so glad and free. Jesus, greatest, highest, I will come to thee. I am resolved, and who will go with me? Come, friends, without delay. Taught by the Bible, led by the Spirit, we'll walk the heavenly way. I will hasten to him, hasten so glad and free. Jesus, greatest, highest, I will come to thee.
Okay, y'all make sure you speak up and kind of face that mic. That'll help. I know, Well, good evening. How are y'all doing this evening? Celia is in Arkansas, in case you want to know. She flew there today to Little Rock to meet our daughter, to help her look for a new apartment because she's going to be moving this summer at some point from Birmingham to Little Rock. So a little closer for us. She was not real happy about it, but I think she's accepted it now. I think you all know that the school was financially in a lot of trouble, and out of her department, math department and computer science department, there were 7 professors and 6 of them are leaving. So it wouldn't be the same people she'd work at next year anyway. So she's going to, Hendrix College. I think that's right. Just north of Little Rock. Starts with a C, but anyway. That's what happens when you get my age and older. You all knows that, but so that's news to you, huh? So what was the favorite thing you read about God this week? Mm-hmm.
Every time I hear passages that talk about his right arm, I automatically think of Jesus because Jesus is seated in his
right hand, yeah. And the strength of his right arm. I mean, a lot of that is because most people are right-handed and their right arm is the strongest. So when it talks about God's right arm, I don't know that his right arm is really any stronger than his left, but that's I guess a personification that we put on God. But yes, Jesus would be that right arm. That was good. Him sitting at the right hand of God. Yep. Anything else? All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and start with the stuff about 2 Samuel and 1 Chronicles. We did 19 through 24 in 2 Samuel and 21 and 22 in 1 Chronicles. I think we're going to move more 1 Chronicles this coming week. But in 2 Samuel 19, there was a famine. Did anyone remember what caused the famine? For what? No, that census is the next thing we're going to talk about. This was before the census. This is something that King Saul did. Gibeonites. He killed a bunch of the Gibeonites. Who were the Gibeonites? People from the land of Gibeon, or the city of Gibeon. Yes. We read it back in the book of Joshua when they started into the promised land, and these people came in and had this old-looking pouches for their water and old beat-up clothes and everything. They said they'd come from a far country and wanted to make peace with the Israelites, and the leaders didn't ask God, and they made peace with them, and then found out they lived there in Canaan. And so Joshua said that they would become water bearers and wood bearers and all of that stuff for all of the Israelites. But he also promised to take care of them. And Saul broke that promise, right? Because he killed a bunch of them. He attacked the city and killed a bunch of them. So what does this tell you about God and his character, that he sent this famine? He's true to his word and expects us to be true to our word too. Yeah. When we make a promise like the Israelites did, even though that promise was not what God wanted them to do, but they made the promise, and he expects them to follow through. And even when we make rash promises and stuff that way, we need to follow through with them, or confess it as soon as we realize it and ask him to forgive us. I'm sorry? Well, he does when he chooses to. Like he forgets our sins because he chooses to. Yeah. But he doesn't forget his promises. He never forgets those, yeah. So, Next story we talked about was David. Just offhand, one day they were, just finished a battle, and he said, "Oh, I wish I had some water from the well in Bethlehem." And what happened? Yeah, 3 of his top men went and got it for him and brought it to him, and he poured it out. Why did he pour it out? Yeah, they risked their lives to get it, and he wasn't, it wasn't like he was commanding them or anything that way to go get it for him. He just said, "Oh, I wish I had a drink of water from there." And they thought, "Oh, well, let's go do that. Let's go." But yeah, it was, they risked their lives going back through enemy lines, behind enemy lines, to get this, jug of water for him. And he poured it out to the Lord, and it was a good thing. I mean, people looked at that as being a very honorable thing for him to do. So, the next one is a little controversial, and that was one of the mornings I got up and I do my reading at the first of the day and that stuff, and then I forgot to listen to the recap. So, according to 2 Samuel, who incited David to take a census? Yeah. 2 Samuel says God enticed David. 1 Chronicles says Satan incited David. So how can those two work together? Yeah. Yes, he does. He uses evil for his purpose, yeah. I think a lot of it is God allows things, like with Job. He allowed it to test Job because he knew Job was going to make it through it. He allowed David to be tempted to do this because he knew David would learn and he would get to know him better. But if you read the Old Testament, a lot of times it seems like they look at God causing everything. Not God allowing everything, but God causing everything, like this. That God incited him. That's the way they looked at things, okay? I don't think it has... That's just how they viewed God, was that he was in control and he caused everything to happen. And we would look at it and say, well, he allowed it to happen. And I think it was probably more like Job, that Satan was like, tempting David to do it, and God allowed that to happen. I don't know, like I said, I don't remember, I didn't listen to the recap that day, so I don't know what Tara Lee said about it. Do anyone remember that? Yeah, okay. For all things work together for good to those who love God and are called according to his purposes. I'll get it out, maybe. Right. And it didn't bother them to say that God caused this or God did this. That was just, that's the way they looked at life. So, yeah. Mm-hmm. I would say that God allowed it, and just like with Job, because I think he allows us to be tempted, even though it's not that he's causing the temptation. He allows us to be tempted. He allows us to go through things, make bad decisions, and learn from that. Hopefully, learn from that, and come closer to him, which David did. David, he immediately he realized that he had sinned. It's really kind of funny to me. Who is it that tried to keep him from taking the census? Joab. And what do you know about Joab? He was in charge of the army. He killed Absalom. He killed, the other one. Abner, yeah. And he was very vicious, and it's like it's like he's not really what I would call a good example of being a follower of God, a Christian or whatever. But in this instance, he was like, hey, you shouldn't do this. Why was that taking the census a sinful thing? Because God had him take census other times, but why was it sinful in that point, that time period? He took it upon himself. And why? I think the motive behind it is the big thing. Yeah. Right. He wanted to know how powerful he was, basically. I think it was a pride thing. That's why a lot of people gripe at Southern Baptist, because we keep track of our attendance and our membership and stuff that way, and they think, well, why would you do that? You know, God blesses, he's good, you know. You don't have... Yes. Yeah, that's right. And how much offering was, and yep. I'm trying to think. We had it at Gainesville when I was there too. That wasn't but 20 years ago, 25 maybe. Yeah. Yeah, I forgot. They used to call it the brag board or something like that. Huh? I'm sorry, Todd. Oh, yeah. So I think it had to do with his motive behind it, that he was just wanting to see how powerful he was, how many people he had under him and stuff that way. So when God judged him, he gave him 3 options. What were they? A plague, for drought, 3 years of famine, 3 let's see, it was 3 years of famine, 3 months of battle, or 3 days of God's wrath. The plague, yeah. And which one did he choose? The plague. Which would you choose? 3 days. Yeah, well, maybe that was part of it. But it also was, he says, I'd rather God do something, because I know God is a merciful God, and maybe it won't be as bad as, you know, being put against his enemies or the famine and stuff that way. So which would you choose? Yeah, I probably would, just because it was a lot shorter, get it over with, like you said. I don't know that that's really what David was thinking in his mind, but you also look at, I guess there was still a lot of, I was thinking maybe one of the others might be more those people over there and not me and my family, and like the famine. Famine would probably not affect him and his family. You know, as being the king, he would get food and his family would get food. So you could look at it and say, well, let's do that, because they're going to suffer, but that's not me and mine. Yes. Yeah, 70,000 that died. That's a bad plague, right? Yeah, 3 days, 70,000 people died. And the plague ended, it was at the threshing floor of Araunah. Huh? Onan, yes. I forgot. That's what it says in King James. Some of them, but this one is Araunah is what the NIV has. And he's a Jebusite. How did David reply when Onan offered to give him the land? Yeah. Yep. He said, I'm not going to give something to God that didn't cost me. Reminds me a lot of things that people give to the church. I mean, sometimes people are very good, but other times one of my favorite stories at Thanksgiving was this lady called the Butterball, I think it was, hotline, and said, I've had my turkey in my freezer for 3 years. Is there anything wrong with it? And the guy said, well, no, it probably won't taste as good, but there's nothing physically wrong. It's not going to hurt you to eat it. And she said, okay, well, that's what I thought, so I'll just give it to the church. Yeah. And people do things like that. I had a friend that was a missionary. His parents were missionaries. He grew up in Africa. And they would get these boxes full of stuff, supplies from churches. Now, it wasn't Southern Baptist, but churches back in the United States would fill up boxes of stuff and send it to them. And one of the things that was in every one of the boxes, and probably hundreds of them, were used tea bags. And I said, why? And he said, we have no idea. Somebody at the state said that we could use them, and so they just started sending us used tea bags. So, who knows? That's just, yeah. Oh, I don't know. I don't know what you'd use it for. So, why is this piece of land that he bought from the Jebusite, why is that land significant? Yeah, the temple was built later. He built an altar. Later the temple was built there. Anything else happen there? It is. But before all of that, in Chronicles, 2 Chronicles 3, by the way, it says, Solomon began to build the temple of the Lord in Jerusalem on Mount Moriah, where the Lord had appeared to his father David. It was on the threshing floor of Onan the Jebusite, the place provided by David. That's in 2 Chronicles. Go all the way back to Genesis chapter 22, and it said, sometime later God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham? And he replied, and he said, take your son, your only son, Isaac, whom you love, and go to the region of Moriah and sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains I will tell you about. That's the same piece of land that Abraham offered, and same area, maybe not exactly the same spot, but the same area that Jesus later was crucified. It was in that same area. So that's a very important place. It's really kind of significant that the Mount Moriah there at Jerusalem, it's a place that's just over and over and over. It's a special place for God. And there are special times too. You know, Passover, which was also the time that Jesus rose from the dead. And when they got out of Egypt, and all of those things, they're all of the same. Okay? Any other things on Chronicles or 2 Samuel? Okay, what about Psalm? Any of the Psalms stand out to you? I don't remember numbers. Huh. Well, Psalm 95 does not say anything about who wrote it. That may have been it. Yeah. And I just went blank of which, because I didn't write it down. I'm going to say it is. I guess I should look at this and see which ones. The one that really stood out to me, I guess the most, was Psalm 96. Not 96. Yes, it is 96, but we didn't read 96, so I must have looked at my notes wrong. Yes. I was looking back through and I saw 96 and I started reading through it and I was like, yes, that's the one. It really jumped out because it's all about praise. That's what I like about it. There is one that, and I thought it was 98, but I don't see the verse I want in there. But it's one of those imprecatory, whatever psalms, the ones it's telling to, judge these people because they're bad and they're doing things wrong. 95. Yeah. 108. I should have looked this up ahead of time. Oh, here it is. Well, oh, here it is. Psalm 109, verse 8. It says, and people use this all the time talking about government officials. And it says, may his day be few and may another take his place of leadership. I've heard that for years about the president or senator or whatever. May his days be few and may another take his place of leadership. So I just thought I'd throw that out there. So 96 isn't what we've read this week. So maybe we'll read it next week and I'll talk about it next week. Any other psalm that, it's really hard to kind of discuss the psalm because you almost have to go back and reread them. So if there is something that when you read along and you come to one of those that just kind of jumps out at you, mark it or something, and then we go back and if we need to read a few verses, we can. There are a lot of prophecies in the Psalms about Jesus and especially about his crucifixion. And so that's something to look for. And David doesn't pull any punches. He or the Psalms, any of them. They say exactly how they're feeling, and sometimes they blame God for it. But almost always it comes back to praising God too. So, all right. Any other questions or comments? Yeah. Yeah. That's right. That's right. Yes, he did. Yep. And yep. And God's big enough to handle it. Yep. Yep. See, I got my phone out. Turned it off. Or the sound down. Yes, he did. Praise him. Yeah. Hmm. Probably Asaph. Hmm. Yes. I hadn't already heard from somebody. Yeah. All right. Well, that's all. Anything else? Let's all stand and we'll join hands and sing our dismissal chorus. Hopefully my phone won't go off again.